Well, thank you again for coming along to our first speaker, who very near and dear to me, Ryan Chafee, who is our divisional, a very, very fabulous company. I can very excited to hear that you're going to come along. So thank you again for agreeing and participating. Now, Ryan has a lead. He's also done a lot of volunteer communities, practices together, has spent a lot of time with. If you haven't had the opportunity to hear Fatima and Ryan talk before, and something that I only listened to a month ago. So you're going to come and have a talk to us, a deep dive case study on and what didn't. And this is from the YP. Take it away, please, Ryan.
Thanks, Julie. So look, I'm honoured here to be speaking at the PMO Leader Conference today. I'm here to share my journey of the EPMO at Yarra Valley Water, the successes, the failures, and the lessons learned. I know many of you here today have been on similar journeys and have your own experiences to share. And I guess as I talk through our story, I would love to reflect on how our experiences compare with your own. My objective today isn't to talk to the value of a PMO. We're all PMO leaders here, and we know the value of what we do. I'm here to focus on the implementation of a future-ready EPMO from a people, change, and culture perspective. I wanted to approach the conversation with a level of vulnerability and openness. So the implementation of our enterprise PMO started in 2022. And while we would hope it would feel like building a bridge over calm waters, in reality, it often felt like building a bridge over turbulent, rocky river while standing on it and dodging wildlife. The shift from future ready is about moving from constant firefighting to insight, foresight, and oversight. To tell you our story, context is key. I'll tell you a little bit about the organisation, the internal and external environment that led to the need of Yarra Valley Water to have a future-ready PMO. So Yarra Valley Water is a water utility in Melbourne, Australia. And on the screen now, you'll see our 2030 strategy. It's holistic and ambitious, and the organisation delivers that strategy through three key pillars: transforming around customers, helping communities thrive, and leading for an environmental future. Central to our strategy is honouring healing country. I guess this shapes how we approach our relationship with Indigenous peoples, the land, waterways, and ecosystem. So from this, you can see that we're a values-based organisation which guides everything we do. So, as I said earlier, Yarra Valley Water is one of Melbourne's 3 retail water corporations. We provide drinking water, sewerage, recycled water, trade waste. We reach about 2 million people, and we've got about 900,000 customers. We do a lot of innovative projects. We do things like converting waste to energy. We're doing green hydrogen trials. We're into habitat preservation and restoration. And we're also about solar and carbon reduction. From this, you can conclude that we're a large, complex organisation. Our operating model is that we're a government-owned corporation. So we seek revenue from customers and we operate for a public good, which means we're heavily regulated by government. Meaning we've got financial constraints with government setting what we can charge and how much we can spend. What this means is we don't have flexibility. We can't seek new revenue. We can't change prices easily. With that comes the expectation that we deliver a set of network improvements with the allocated funds. To understand the pressure we're under and the catalyst for the EPMO, we need to look at both the external and the internal environment. So Yarra Valley Water has significant capital investment, around $2.2 billion over 5 years. That's across a range of diverse projects, including infrastructure and asset, and also digital. With that external environment was the perfect storm of challenge. We had a new regulatory framework which required a stronger measurement and accountability of outcomes. We've got aging infrastructure, climate change impacts, a tough economic climate, and customer expectations to all keep prices stable. This means that we had less money, more expectations, requiring smarter investment and conscious trade-off decision-making. This external environment highlighted the need to fundamentally improve governance, accountability, efficiency, scalability in the way we operate, and decision traceability. This forged why the organization needed a future-ready PMO. With the immense external pressures, we're also dealing with internal challenges. We identified 6 significant interconnected problem areas, and these were fundamental issues, not minor roadblocks. These 6 issues impacted effective and efficient delivery. We'll start off with governance. So there was inconsistent governance and decision-making. And what we found, there was lack of clear pathways, who made decisions, how they were made. It was often unclear who was accountable for those decisions. And secondly, the way we delivered projects was quite siloed with a kind of immature project management practices. So what that meant, there was no consistency in how projects are delivered, no common language, and that made it really hard to understand at the enterprise level what was going on. In terms of portfolio management, there's a lot of inconsistent parallel planning processes, no kind of trade-offs decision-making. And I guess, as I said earlier, in an environment characterized by constraint, you really need to be able to make those trade-off decisions. We lack the reporting and data, with manual processes, no single source of truth, and very financially oriented. And that meant that kind of we lacked, the executive team lacked the insights to really make those decisions in investing in the right things. There was fragmented benefits management and no accountability for benefit realization. So often projects would get approved and sponsors weren't held to account. And then lastly, resource management struggles. Understanding the capacity and capability of resources across the organization. It was felt that there's too many priorities. And then with that lack of resource management, a real lack of confidence in the kind of deliverability of our plan. So with the external and internal challenges, we had a clear mandate. We needed to build a future-ready PMO to transform capital program management and delivery. So we took this external and internal problem with these challenges diagnosed, and we moved to solution building. We went about a deliberate and inclusive approach to define the EPMO. And we did that in 6 steps. So firstly, we needed to play back the current state and understand how we do things now. And with that understanding of the current state, we led to kind of build an understanding about what this EPMO was and what it wasn't. And that's really important to get on the same page. Then we went about formulating that collective ambition, and this helps stakeholder buy-in and shared ownership. With that, we defined goals. What kind of outcomes did we want to achieve, and what kind of benefits did we want to deliver to the organization? What did success look like for us as a new function? Once those goals were defined and our vision, we went about to formalize the EPMO purpose and what functions we would undertake. And that allowed us to prioritize the roadmap for transformation, how we're going to deliver it. You might be wondering why this matters. This kind of structured approach directly informed the transformation program was kind of crucial for bringing the roadmap and the EPMO to life. So our EPMO vision, or the why, is we were to act as the critical link between the strategy and portfolio execution. And our goal was to deliver outcomes, help the organization deliver outcomes and to project to realize genuine benefits. The how we were going to do that is kind of under 6 core capabilities. First of those capabilities was integrated portfolio planning, and that's basically investing in the right things to get the right outcomes. The second thing we went about was an enterprise delivery framework, which for us is just a common language and a consistent way to deliver and govern projects. The third one is fit for purpose governance. So, clear governance pathways with clarified roles and responsibilities. The fourth capability was tracking and monitoring. That's metrics, basically, and insights that drive better decision making at various levels of the organization. The fifth one is benefits management, and that for us was increasing accountability for outcomes to support the external obligations that I mentioned earlier. And lastly was effective enterprise resource management, understanding whether we have the resource capacity and capability to deliver on our ambitious plan. Under those, you'll see two key enabling capabilities, and we like to think of that as our support structure. Firstly, it's around strengthening the sponsor and delivery capability, supporting our people. And then lastly, it's the technology solution of a project and portfolio management tool to bring it all to life. So overall, this blueprint guided everything that followed. So the ePMO future blueprint is just the foundation. And I guess our ultimate goal was project delivery excellence. And the way that we went about achieving that excellence is developing our people, refining processes, and enabling consistency across critical but interrelated areas. I like to use a cogs analogy. We see these kind of capabilities as interrelated cogs in a broader ecosystem of change. Each cog is different, but all are important. And why I bring this up is one cog can affect delivery and achieving of organizational goals. So the EPMO is just one piece in the puzzle. We need support from the exec. We need a close relationship with finance. And we also need to fit into the broader corporate governance ecosystem of the organization. So our EPMO journey hasn't been a quick win. And we've kind of been on a journey in kind of several key phases. So in early 2022, we went about formulating the foundation and vision for the EPMO. And as I said earlier, that was around assessing the challenges and defining our vision. Why that's important? It allows for crucial leadership buy-in. And as you would understand, this kind of buy-in is kind of critical for any transformation. Assessing the current state challenges required tough truths around the current state. It wasn't exactly a pretty picture. And understanding the current state was the catalyst for the rest of the roadmap. In late 2022, we went about establishing a quick win, and that was around our fit for purpose governance. Slight changes to investment committees, a clear terms of reference kind of gave senior leaders that visibility. As an example, having investment decisions presented at a committee rather than someone with financial delegation started to give exec oversight as to what was happening in the portfolio. In 2023 to 24, we went to build the core, and we like to call that our enterprise delivery framework. That's a huge effort, aligning technology and infrastructure projects across the business, a common language, set of processes, and a consistent way of working. What was really important with that for us was co-design with our users, even if that meant slower adoption. In 2023, we also went about integrating proper portfolio management. We kind of shift from an organizational mindset of whoever shouts the loudest gets investment to more strategic prioritization and kind of uncomfortable trade-offs. In 2024-25, we sharpened our focus on people. We went about uplifting sponsor and project management capability. And as you'd appreciate, frameworks fail with unskilled people. We embedded all this process, and then we realized how big the capability gap in project management actually was. And this people part of the transformation is often the hardest part. This year, we're on the journey of implementing a PPM solution. And that's for us is around leveraging technology for those centralized info and insights. For us on our transformation journey, having the processes and capability built before the tool was really important because we see the tool as an enabler and not a silver bullet. And the last bit is the ongoing journey. As you would all, as PMO leaders would appreciate, PMOs must evolve with the business. And, I don't think we'd ever sit at a point and say mission accomplished because we risk becoming irrelevant. and we need to continue to evolve with the organisation. One of the core elements of our EPMO implementation was our enterprise delivery framework. What I like to think of the enterprise delivery framework is it acts as a critical bridge, ensuring that our strategy and regulatory submission doesn't just sit on the shelf. It helps us close our loop between strategic ambitions and the day-to-day execution. That's supported by our tiered governance structure, which essentially allows active involvement in the project throughout its life cycle, ensuring that we invest in the right outcomes, ensure that we invest in the right things to get the right outcomes. And for us, the EDF is around really closing the performance loop. I guess, having a strong benefits management approach feeds back into our strategy and planning to ensure that we're informing our strategic direction, and we're investing in the things that get the right outcomes, and it's helping us measure up against our pricing submission. So what worked well on our journey? I guess the first thing that really worked well was having a shared vision, and I like to think of it as our North Star. This is crucial in low maturity environments with siloed ways of working. We needed to constantly reinforce what the EPMO was there to achieve. The second thing that was really important for us was quick wins, and we need to build credibility fast. We need to demonstrate the value of the EPMO early to help change the hearts and minds, and especially we had our skeptics along the way. The third thing that worked for us really well was partnering and co-design. We need to kind of build something that was fit for purpose of the organisation. We had to involve stakeholders across the business. Culturally, imposing solutions on the business fails if there's not that level of co-design. I guess I'd describe the organisation as a consensus, bottom-up, change-driven organisation. And so on that note, partnering and co-design is really crucial. It's not the kind of culture that was very executive directive. So this means it's a longer upfront journey, but I guess that prevents future resistance and issues. The fourth thing that was really important was to start simple and practical, and we went with an MVP approach. This allowed us to deliver usable, value quickly, and we didn't chase perfection. This is especially important in an organisation that does not have the capacity or capability to absorb a lot of change. The fifth thing that worked really well was phased deployment, and that helped us really manage risks around our people. We really wanted to avoid a big bang implementation, which would overwhelm the organisation. And this phased deployment allowed learning, adaptation, and better change management. And then lastly, the kind of most crucial part was relentless change management focus. Our success was centered around people and culture, not just processes. And then lastly, what was really important to us was to encourage feedback. Throughout the journey, we actively sought feedback and acted on it, even when that feedback was tough, and we had to listen all the time. We needed to show the organisation that the EPMO was evolving, that we weren't rigid, and that led to several key improvements. So here's some of the hurdles we faced on our journey, and getting the EPMO operational involved very real specific roadblocks. The first obstacle we faced around was underestimating the change management effort. And that's a big lesson for us, and we learned the hard way. The sheer scale and sustained effort needed was beyond our initial estimates. And simply announcing the change wasn't enough. We need constant attention for adoption. The second challenge we faced was integrating different and existing PMOs. So Yarra Valley Water operates in a hub and spoke model, and it's very complex to align the organisation's pockets of local PMOs, their culture, their processes, and often we kind of lent into a lot of turf wars. So we needed to really shift the culture around my silo or my PMO to our enterprise approach, especially difficult because the EPMO didn't have any positional authority. The third obstacle we faced was around low baseline project management capability. So we're building an EPMO where PM maturity was quite low. And, whilst we're introducing a framework, often we had to introduce foundational concepts. And we got a lot of questions at every turn of what the value of the framework was. As an example, why do we need to do a PMP? And I know as PMO leaders the value of a PMP, but in a low maturity environment, often we had to explain those concepts along the way. So we made some missteps along the way. The first one of those is going too fast. I've kind of come from more mature organizations where the speed of change can happen a lot quicker. And, we tried too much too quickly, and that overwhelmed teams. I think the lessons learned is that we had to pause, we had to break it down and do things in bite-sized chunks. And I guess reflecting on that, our EPMO journey has been a marathon, and we kind of needed to respect the organizational speed limit. The second kind of misstep was lack of co-design. Often we kind of went in for perfect solutions designed centrally, and those were met with skepticism, and those lacked shared ownership. So the learning for me on that journey was true co-design is bringing along people on the journey. And when we did that, adoption soared, people support what they help create. The third item was resistance to operating model redesign. As part of the journey, we attempted changes to roles and responsibilities and accountability. And that was a sensitive area for the culture. So we had to park some of that stuff to avoid creating too much change resistance. As an EPMO, balancing standardization and flexibility is a constant challenge. How much to standardize, how much to allow for flexibility. One of the principles of our EPMO implementation was not be too prescriptive and to tell people how to deliver. We asked projects to operate against a set of guardrails, which gave teams more flexibility to deliver. I think my reflection is there's no perfect balance. It requires constant negotiation, clear principles, and transparency. The second thing was around minimum viable governance. So Atlassian uses the term minimum viable governance. What is the minimum governance that still achieves the outcomes and confidence around delivery? And I guess the challenge is, what does minimum viable governance mean? It's a constant debate. And I guess one of the kind of key takeouts for us is getting the right level of governance is not set and forget. Minimum viable governance evolves, like sponsor engagement needs reinforcing, and operating models need continuous tuning. We don't always get it right. Another kind of hurdle we faced was siloed functional thinking versus what's right for the enterprise. Often group decisions versus enterprise needs often come into conflict. We often as an EPMO advocate for the enterprise view, and EPMO must champion that enterprise view, in terms of data, in terms of strategic alignment, in terms of having those challenging conversations. Clear decision rights are vital. So what are some of the gains from our EPMO journey? So firstly, we've improved senior management visibility. We're allowed for clearer data-driven line of sight, portfolio, risk, progress, and that's allowed more informed discussions and top-level decisions. The second thing is we've drastically increased the quality of project artifacts. Thanks to the EDF, there's more consistency and rigor around planning, documentation, and management, which means fewer surprises and better project control. Thirdly, we've got initiatives that are more strongly aligned to strategy. We've got planning and prioritization that it now ensures that investments in the right projects driving our strategy, which allows the organization to move beyond pet projects to strategic impact. The fourth big outcome we've achieved so far is around clear governance and decision-making. Roles are better understood, accountability is defined, and that allows for more effective, transparent decisions and less wasted time. Fifthly, we've increased the focus on benefit realization. We're moving beyond a numbers-based business to looking at what risks and what issues, what benefits, and that's allowed active tracking delivery of intended business value and outcomes. And then lastly, we're on a journey to uplift project management capability. We're doing that via coaching, training, and consistent EDF application. And that allows our people better equipped to manage projects successfully, and that's a win for everyone. So here are some hard-win lessons on my journey about setting up a future-ready PMO. The first one of those is don't let perfect be the enemy of good. We really had to iterate based on real-world feedback. I came into the organization with high ambitions to kind of introduce best practice, but we really kind of needed to meet the organization in the middle. The second thing I'd like to call out is standardization has its limits. So for us, what was really important is not standardization for the sake of standardization, and not telling areas of the business how to deliver their projects was really important. The third thing I'd like to call out is change management isn't just a phase. For an EPMO in an evolving organization, we need to constantly pivot, and that required continuous engagement. And then lastly, executive sponsorship is necessary, but sustained middle management buy-in determines success. So what that means for us is we couldn't just rely on exec support. We need to kind of have that support at all the levels of the organization, because that's really going to help us embed that change on a more ongoing basis. So if I was to conclude on the journey, a couple of key takeouts for me: it's a complex journey. And success for me hasn't always been in a straight line. You know, we've had wins along the way, and there's been periods where, you know, I felt that we were going to struggle to survive. And I guess it's kind of required me to have a lot of resilience and adapt along the way. I think the second thing is we've come in with a vision of what we thought we wanted to achieve, but we've constantly had to change and evolve as the organization has evolved. We've really had to learn from challenges. And I guess for me, seeing setbacks as an opportunity to improve has been really important. And we've celebrated wins. Every milestone that moves us forward is really important to stop, reflect, and on the journey that we've kind of been on throughout the transformation. So that's it from me. Lovely to be here.
Brian, thank you. Thank you so much.
So I think it's been really crucial to, as I said earlier, to not be too rigid. And when there's a change of senior leaders, I think it's really important to reassess the value proposition and kind of reassess the strategy and the vision and the ways of working. And I guess that requires some level of flexibility, right? So, you know, as EPMO leaders, we come in and we think that we know what's best for an organization because we've done it somewhere else or seen what works where somewhere else. But I think it requires to let go of all that, actively listen, because my understanding of, you know, having a successful ongoing function is requires a constant understanding of what value you bring to the organization and what the needs are of your senior leaders in supporting the direction that they have. Yeah, I think, like I said in the presentation, minimum viable governance to one person is very different to another, and delivery teams to minimum viable governance is just let me go ahead and do what ever I need to do. And to your senior executives, it's like to your point earlier, in a heavily regulated environment, to maintain those relationships with the regulators and the board, it's very different. So it's how do you strike that right balance to have effective governance in place but not choke delivery? It's a constant battle. Yeah, look, we've all worked with PMOs that are very rigid with their templates, tools, and processes, and then business stakeholders ask, "Well, why are we doing this?" And often the PMO's lost its way. I think in a low maturity environment, you've got to kind of reinforce the why behind what we're trying to achieve, because if they're not skilled in project management, they might not know why they're doing a lot of these things. And I think that's important for them to understand the governance value of doing what they do. I can hear you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Julie. Thank you very much.